U.S. Citizenship N-400 Interview, Tax Filing History and IRS Notices, Part 1. Andrea and David sit across from each other in a quiet USCIS interview room. Papers are neatly arranged on the desk. David looks attentive but slightly nervous, and Andrea maintains a calm, professional tone as she begins the tax-related portion of the interview.
All right, David, let's begin with some questions about your tax history. These questions help us understand your record of tax compliance. My main question for this segment is, have you ever failed to file a federal, state, or local tax return that you were required to file?
No, officer. I have always filed my taxes every year since I became required to do so. At first, I wasn't completely sure how the process worked, but I made sure to follow the instructions carefully. When I earned income from my first job in the U.S., I used a tax preparation service because I wanted to avoid mistakes.
Good. And just to clarify, have you ever missed a filing deadline and then filed late, even one time?
Yes, one time I filed a few days late because I misunderstood the deadline. It was about 4 years ago. I didn't owe very much, and I corrected it right away. I paid the small late fee, and I made sure to file early in the next years so it wouldn't happen again.
Thank you for explaining that. A short delay with a reasonable explanation is not usually a problem as long as the applicant corrected it and paid any penalties. Now, as a follow-up, have you ever received any notices from the IRS asking you to fix or update a tax return?
Yes. Once I received a notice asking me to confirm the amount of income from my second job. It turned out the employer filed a corrected form. I sent the additional documentation right away. I didn't owe extra taxes, but the IRS wanted to verify the numbers. After I mailed them the documents, they closed the issue.
Very good. Final follow-up for this segment. Are all your tax filings up to date right now?
Yes, officer. I filed my most recent return before the deadline this year, and I have copies with me if you need them.
Excellent. That helps us transition into the next area, your overall tax responsibility and understanding of your obligations. Now that we covered filing history, I want to focus on tax responsibility. My next main question is, do you currently owe any overdue federal, state, or local taxes?
No, officer. I don't owe anything at this time. I always try to pay the amount I owe before the deadline. If I see that the amount is higher than expected, I usually plan ahead and make sure the money is available.
Good. And have you ever owed taxes that you couldn't pay on time?
There was 1 year when I owed more than usual because I worked extra hours and also received some contract income. At first, the amount surprised me. I couldn't pay the full balance immediately, so I contacted the IRS and arranged a short-term payment plan. I paid everything off within 3 months.
Thank you. That is the correct approach. When someone owes taxes they cannot pay right away, the responsible thing is to notify the IRS and set up a plan. Did you complete the plan without missing any payments?
Yes, I followed the schedule exactly. I also started adjusting my withholdings at work so the same situation wouldn't happen again.
Good decision. As a follow-up, do you understand your responsibility to pay taxes even if you disagree with the amount?
Yes, officer. If I believe something is wrong, I can file an amendment or ask questions, but I still have to follow the law. I understand that taxes are part of supporting the country.
Excellent. One more follow-up before we move to the next segment. If the IRS contacted you today about a mistake, what would you do?
I would respond immediately. I'd review the notice carefully, send any required documents, and fix the issue. I try to stay organized, so I keep copies of all my tax returns in case something comes up.
Very good. Let's continue next with your understanding of joint versus individual tax responsibilities. Now, let's move into your filing status. My main question for this segment is, do you usually file your tax returns jointly or individually?
I file individually. I'm not married, so that has been the correct filing status for me each year. Because it's the same status every time, the process has become easier for me.
Good. And have you ever filed jointly with anyone in the past?
No, officer. I have never filed jointly. All of my tax returns are individual filings under my own name and social security number.
Thank you for clarifying. As a follow-up, do you understand the responsibilities that come with filing jointly if you were ever married in the future?
Yes, I believe so. If someone files jointly, both people are responsible for the accuracy of the return and for any taxes owed. Even if only one person made the mistake, both are legally responsible. I learned that when reading some information on the IRS website, and it helped me understand how important accuracy is.
That's correct. Now another follow-up. Have you ever been claimed as a dependent on someone else's tax return since becoming an adult?
No, I've supported myself since I moved to the U.S. My parents live abroad, and I have not lived in anyone's household here. So no one has ever listed me as a dependent.
Good. And have you ever claimed someone else as a dependent?
No, I don't have children, and I haven't financially supported anyone enough to meet the IRS requirements for that category.
Understood. Your filing status seems consistent, which helps keep your records clear. In the next segment, we'll discuss your understanding of how taxes relate to good moral character requirements for naturalization. For our final segment today, I'd like to focus on the connection between taxes and naturalization. My main question is, do you understand why tax compliance is important for becoming a U.S. citizen?
Yes, officer. I understand that filing and paying taxes is part of showing good moral character. It shows responsibility and respect for the laws of the United States. If someone avoids taxes or fails to fix mistakes, it can affect their eligibility for naturalization.
That's right. And as a follow-up, what steps have you taken to make sure your tax record stays accurate?
I keep digital and paper copies of my tax returns every year. I also check my W-2 forms and any 1099 forms for mistakes before filing. If something looks unusual, I contact the employer to confirm. I try to file early so I have time to correct anything before the deadline.
Excellent. Now, one more follow-up. If you discovered today that you made a mistake on last year's return, what would you do?
I would file an amended return. I know the IRS has Form 1040X for corrections. I would send the corrected information, pay any difference if needed, and keep a record of the amendment. I want my history to stay clean, especially during the naturalization process.
Very good. Your answers show that you understand not only the rules, but also the responsibility behind them. In Part 2, we will continue with more detailed questions about specific types of income and reporting requirements. Vocabulary note: file a return, submit your tax documents to the IRS. Penalty: extra amount of money you must pay for filing late or making a mistake. Overdue taxes: taxes that should have been paid but were not paid on time. Payment plan: agreement with the IRS to pay owed taxes over time. Filing jointly: submitting one tax return as a married couple. Dependent: a person you support financially and may list on your tax return. Good moral character: legal requirement showing you follow U.S. laws and act responsibly. Amended return: corrected tax form submitted after the original filing.
U.S. Citizenship N-400 Interview, Income Reporting, Foreign Income and Payment Plans, Part 2. Andrea and David remain in the same quiet USCIS interview room. Papers from the earlier discussion are still on the desk. Andrea transitions into more detailed questions after reviewing David's previous answers about filing history and responsibility.
David, in Part 1, you explained your U.S. filing history clearly. Now I want to go a little deeper. My main question for this segment is, have you ever earned any income from outside the United States?
No, officer. All of my income has come from employment here in the U.S. I haven't worked for foreign companies, and I haven't had investments or business activities outside the country.
Thank you. I ask because many applicants don't realize that foreign income must also be reported on U.S. tax returns. Even if taxes were already paid in another country, the income still needs to be listed here. As a follow-up, do you understand your responsibility to report foreign income if you ever earn it in the future?
Yes, absolutely. I've read that U.S. tax rules apply to worldwide income, so if I ever get paid from another country, maybe for freelance work or some kind of remote job, I must include that income on my U.S. tax return.
Correct. Now let me ask another follow-up. Have you ever held foreign bank accounts, investment accounts, or other financial assets that would require reporting?
No, officer. I only have my bank accounts here in the U.S. I don't have savings or investments abroad. My parents have their own accounts in their country, but none of those are under my name.
Understood. And one last question for this segment. If you did open a foreign account in the future, do you understand that some accounts must be reported separately, not just on the tax return itself?
Yes, I've heard about that. I know there are forms like FBAR or other disclosures. If that ever applies to me, I would follow the rules carefully and make sure everything is reported correctly.
Very good. That awareness shows responsibility, and it helps avoid problems later. Next, I'll ask about what you would do if the IRS questioned your reported income. Since you mentioned earlier that you once responded to an IRS notice about a corrected form, I want to explore that area more deeply. My main question for this segment is, have you ever received an IRS letter stating that you failed to report income or that your reported income did not match their records?
No, officer. The only notice I ever received was the one I described earlier in Part 1. It wasn't about missing income. It was just to confirm a corrected amount from my second job. I never had a situation where the IRS said I left out income or reported something incorrectly.
Good. And if you did receive such a letter, what would your first step be?
I would check the letter carefully, compare it with my tax documents, and make sure I understand what the IRS is asking. Then I would send any required forms or corrections. If I made a mistake, I would fix it immediately.
That's the correct approach. Now a follow-up. Do you understand that failing to correct income errors, especially repeated ones, can affect the good moral character requirement for naturalization?
Yes, I do. I know that taxes are taken seriously, and accuracy is part of responsibility. If something was wrong, I would correct it right away because I don't want any record of ignoring an IRS notice.
Very good. One more follow-up. Do you keep organized records of your pay stubs, W-2s, 1099s, and other income documents in case an issue comes up?
Yes, I keep both digital and paper copies. I save everything for several years, and I also download documents from my employer's online systems. That helps me double-check numbers before filing.
Excellent. That level of organization makes the process smoother and helps avoid misunderstandings. In the next segment, I want to ask more about payment agreements. In Part 1, you mentioned a short-term payment plan you used a few years ago. Now I want to go deeper. My main question is, have you ever entered into any other tax payment agreements with the IRS besides the one you already described?
No, officer. That was the only time. It was a simple short-term plan, and I paid it off quickly. After that, I adjusted my withholdings, so I haven't had a balance due again.
Good. As a follow-up, if you ever found yourself facing a larger tax bill in the future, would you feel comfortable contacting the IRS to arrange a payment plan again?
Yes, definitely. I think communication is important. If I can't pay something immediately, I shouldn't ignore it. I would contact the IRS early, like I did before, and ask for a plan that matches the situation.
Exactly. Now, another follow-up. Do you understand that entering a payment agreement is acceptable as long as you follow it and do not try to avoid the debt?
Yes, I understand. The issue isn't having a payment plan, it's failing to follow the rules. As long as I make payments on time and keep everything honest, it should not affect my application.
Correct. Many applicants misunderstand that point, so thank you for addressing it clearly. One last question for this segment. If the IRS increased your tax amount after reviewing your return, how would you handle the new balance?
I would pay it if I could. If the amount is too high for a single payment, I would again request a payment arrangement. I wouldn't ignore the letter or let the debt grow. I know that being proactive is important.
Good. That understanding helps demonstrate responsibility. Now we can move into our final topic for today, accurate income reporting. My final main question for part 2 builds on everything you've told me so far. Have you always reported all sources of income on your federal tax returns?
Yes, officer. I report everything. I make sure to enter all W-2 income, and if I receive any 1099 forms, I include those as well. I don't try to hide anything, even small amounts.
Good. Now, as a follow-up, have you ever been paid in cash for work? And if so, did you report that income?
Yes, I was paid in cash a few times for small side jobs, like helping a friend's business with inventory. I kept track of the amounts and included that income on my return. It wasn't much, but I understand that all income must be reported, whether cash or check.
Excellent. Many applicants misunderstand that part. Another follow-up. Do you understand that intentionally not reporting income can be considered tax fraud?
Yes, I understand. Even if someone thinks the amount is small, it still matters. I don't want any problems with the IRS or with my naturalization process, so I tell the truth on my tax forms.
Good. And one last follow-up before we complete part 2. If an employer failed to give you a form, how would you make sure the income is still reported correctly?
I would contact the employer and request the form. If they didn't provide it, I would still report the income based on my own records, like pay stubs or bank statements. I know the responsibility is ultimately mine.
Very good, David. This concludes part 2. In part 3, we'll complete the tax section with final clarifications and a short summary of your tax history. Vocabulary note: worldwide income, all money earned anywhere in the world, which U.S. taxpayers must report. Foreign account, bank or investment account located outside the U.S. IRS notice. A letter from the Internal Revenue Service asking for more information or advising of a problem. Income mismatch, when the IRS has different income information than what you reported. Payment agreement, an IRS plan allowing you to pay taxes over time. Withholdings, money your employer takes from your paycheck for taxes. Income reporting, listing all money earned on your tax return. Tax fraud, illegal act of lying or hiding information to avoid paying taxes.
U.S. Citizenship N-400 Interview, Tax Penalties, Fraud and Good Moral Character, Part 3. Andrea and David remain seated in the same quiet USCIS interview room. After completing the deeper questions in Part 2, Andrea turns the page in her file and prepares to finish the tax portion of the naturalization review.
David, we're now entering the final clarifications of the tax section. My main question for this segment is, do you understand that giving false or incomplete information on a tax return can lead to serious penalties?
Yes, officer. I understand that providing false information, whether on purpose or by ignoring important details, can result in fines, interest, and possibly criminal charges. I know the IRS takes accuracy very seriously, and I try to follow the rules carefully.
Good. Since you've been consistent in reporting your income in parts 1 and 2, this question is just to confirm your understanding of the law. As a follow-up, can you explain what you would do if you discovered that a number you reported last year was not accurate?
I would file an amended return right away. I'd check my documents, correct the mistake, submit the new form, and pay any difference I owe. I wouldn't wait, because I know delay can create more problems.
Exactly. Now, one more follow-up. Do you understand that intentionally hiding income or lying on a return can be considered tax fraud and can affect your naturalization?
Yes, officer. I understand completely. Even a small lie is still a lie, and I know the government expects honesty from applicants. That's why I keep my documents organized and double-check everything.
Thank you, David. Your answers show awareness and responsibility. Next, I want to explore your understanding of how the IRS applies penalties and interest when taxes are not paid correctly. Moving forward, my next main question is, do you understand how the IRS applies penalties and interest when taxes are not paid fully or on time?
Yes, officer. I understand that if someone fails to pay by the deadline, the IRS adds interest to the amount owed. There may also be penalties, especially if the person waited too long or didn't communicate with the IRS. The longer the delay, the more the amount grows.
That's correct. Since you previously mentioned a short-term payment plan from several years ago, I want to confirm your understanding. As a follow-up, when you had that payment plan, did you understand that interest could still apply during the repayment period?
Yes, the IRS explained that interest might continue until the balance was fully paid. That motivated me to finish the plan quickly. I didn't want the amount to grow.
Good decision. Now another follow-up. If you ever owed a larger amount in the future, what steps would you take to avoid long-term penalties?
I would contact the IRS immediately, ask for a payment agreement, and follow it carefully. I'd try to avoid missing payments. I also think it's important to adjust withholdings if needed so the same situation doesn't repeat.
Exactly. One final question for this segment. Do you understand that unpaid penalties or unresolved tax debt can affect the good moral character requirement for citizenship?
Yes, officer. That's why I've always made sure my taxes are current. I never want to leave anything unresolved.
Very good. Next, we'll review your understanding of accurate reporting and fraud prevention. Since we've talked about responsibility, penalties, and reporting, my next main question is, what steps do you personally take to avoid tax mistakes or any situation that could look like fraud?
Officer, I try to stay very organized. I keep all my income documents, W-2s, 1099s, pay stubs, in one folder. I also check the numbers against my employer's online system. When I'm filing, I enter everything carefully and review the return before submitting it. I don't guess about any numbers. If something is unclear, I ask the employer or check IRS instructions.
Good. As a follow-up, do you ever rely on tax preparation software or a professional preparer?
Yes, I used a tax preparer my first year because I was new to the system. Now I mostly use software, but I still read each section carefully. I never sign the return unless I understand what it says. I know that even if someone helps me, I am still responsible for the accuracy.
That is correct. Another follow-up. Have you ever been asked by anyone, an employer, a friend, or a preparer, to hide income or report something incorrectly?
No, officer. No one has ever asked me to do something dishonest. But even if someone did, I would refuse. I don't want problems with the IRS, and honesty is important to me.
Excellent. A final question for this segment. If you discovered that a preparer filed something incorrectly on your behalf, what would you do?
I would fix it immediately by filing an amendment. I would also stop using that preparer. I know the responsibility is still mine, no matter who submitted the form.
Very good. We're almost done. In the next segment, I will ask the final clarifications I need regarding your overall tax compliance. This is the final segment of the tax portion. My main question is there anything else in your tax history, anything at all, that we have not discussed and that could affect your naturalization?
No, officer. Everything in my tax history is accurate and up to date. I've filed every required return, paid all taxes owed, corrected any small issues in the past, and I don't have any outstanding debts or penalties. There's nothing hidden or unresolved.
Thank you. I appreciate your clear answers throughout parts 1 and 2. As a follow-up, have you ever had a tax-related court case, lien, or collection action?
No, none at all. I never had a lien, never went to court for taxes, and never had the IRS send my account to collections.
Very good. Another follow-up. Do you currently have any open matters with the IRS? Anything pending, under review, or waiting for your response?
No, officer. Everything is complete. I haven't received any recent letters, and there are no ongoing issues.
Excellent. And one final confirmation. Do you fully understand that tax compliance is a continuing responsibility, even after becoming a U.S. citizen?
Yes, absolutely. I know that being a citizen means continuing to follow the law, including filing and paying taxes each year. I will keep maintaining accurate records and reporting all income.
Thank you, David. Your answers show consistency and responsibility. With that, we have completed the tax section of your N-400 interview. We will now move on to the next part of the application. Vocabulary note: interest, extra cost added over time when tax payments are late, withholdings, money taken from your paycheck for taxes before you receive it, penalty, extra charge for breaking a tax rule, tax fraud, intentionally lying or hiding information to avoid paying taxes, lien, legal claim on property because of unpaid taxes, collection action, when the IRS tries to recover unpaid taxes through enforced methods, tax preparer, person who helps you file your taxes, fraud, intentionally doing something dishonest for financial gain.